Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. With us today, Charna Rosenhotz. She is from Aleph, a school of the Jewish Renewal. And she has it's a special weekend. She has two parshas to speak about, Vayakhel and Pekudei. So first of all, thank you for coming.
What an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So in these two parshas, the reading of Vayakhel and Pekudei begins with Moses commanding the people of Israel to observe the Shabbat and continues to tell us in great detail about the building of the tabernacle. Pekudei, the last reading from the book of Exodus, Sefer Shmot, begins with an audit of how the contributions for the tabernacle, the Mishkan, were used. The portion goes on to describe the completion of the tabernacle and its assembly and concludes by depicting the glory of the Lord entering the Mishkan.
Amen.
The first pasuk of the first parsha of the two is Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat bnei Yisrael vayomer alehem ele advarim asher tziva Adonai la'asot otam. Moses then convoked the whole Israelite community and said to them, "These are the things that the Lord has commanded you to do." So, here's my question. Exodus, our book, begins with a dramatic story about a people enslaved, and then the plagues, and then the Exodus, and the journey throughout the desert, and then at some point we stop, and it becomes the most boring book ever. Including the non-dramatic ending of the book that we read this week. So, how can we still conclude the book of Shemot with a high tone rather than a low one?
Well, it's a great question. And in a way, you're asking, how does mind-numbing details matter?
Exactly.
And so, there's so much richness that we can unpack here. So I think I'll start by saying that imagine you're going to start a business, and you sit down with your team and you vision, and you create this beautiful vision, and you get so excited because in that vision, it's like, this is where we're going to go. And then you kind of come down to your mission, and you get your values all set up, what's important to you, and then you create your objectives, and next thing you know, you're dealing with strategies and goals. And they're boring compared to your vision.
Right.
Yet in order to get to where you want to go, you have to break it down into details. And so we see that in Tetzaveh, we were given these instructions. We're hearing them again. It's not only mind-numbing details, but they've been repeated for us.
Right. We get the blueprint first and then the action.
Right, exactly. But that is actually a deep lesson of reminding us that when we want to manifest something, this is the process. I've had jobs that I really love, but 3, 4, 5, 6 years into it, it's like, oh my God, this is the boring and the repetition. How do I find meaning and purpose in that? And so I think we see that process reflected here in these two parshiot.
Right, and one of the things you mentioned the details. The attention to details here is very fine-tuned. There's no illustration, or there's no, you don't interpret things in your own fashion. You just do things exactly as prescribed.
Precision is everything. Look, if you're going to have an ending where God's glory rests amongst the people, and you have that kind of power and awesome energy, if you are not precise, that kind of energy could actually hurt you. And so perhaps we can ask ourselves, what is the power? What is the possibility about being precise in our religious practice? But there's one other piece I want to add, because if we're going to really embrace Torah, we remember that she is an orchard, and an orchard pardes has different seasons.
Right.
And so that we can take different levels of understanding into some of these mind-numbing details. Perhaps they're not so mind-numbing at all, but they're like treasures. They're like a treasure chest. A pasuk could be like a certain sentence could be like a treasure chest, and you open it up, and the first thing you have to do is the literal. Just kind of like, oh, wow, there's some cobwebs here. There's a spider or two. This seems really kind of not so important. And you dig a little deeper. And next thing you know, you have a treasure. And so I'll give you an example.
Sure.
You could talk about, the Aron, the actual ark, where within it are deep treasures. The Rambam wants you to think of that Aron like the heart. Midrash Rambam wants you to embrace this like it's a body. Rav Kook wants you to understand there's more going on here. So how can we actually get curious enough to find out what those secret treasures are?
Right. And, I hear you speak, and it's interesting because what we find in the Torah is a very exact detail. There is no jazzy way of improvisation. There's no personal expression. The personal expression is left to the aftermath interpretation of what it means.
Fair enough. Correct.
Right? The ark is
Correct.
exact, but we can then look at it and see in it whatever we want.
Isn't that beautiful power of the imagination, and how our own being reflective of God's creative powers, that we can bring that creativity to the text, could be very empowering, if you ask me. It can kind of release us to discover our own inner spirituality. I really believe in the concept that the Kabbalists talk about arousal from below, arousal from below in order to initiate arousal from above.
Right.
And so what does it take? What is inside these details that I can find my own unique face, that I can create an arousal in order to invite that glory of God to rest upon me? And how can I do that in, Vayakhel, to gather, to really create a kahal, to create a gathering, to realize it's not just my own individuality, but who I am in relationship to my community is deeply embedded in this parsha. Just like as Pekudei, like the word pakad, to me is one of the richest words, because it means so much more than inventory and accounting.
Oh, there's presence in it.
Yes. Exactly. And accountability and responsibility and remembering who we really are. I mean, we got into this situation when God pakaded Sarah back in Genesis.
Right.
In order for Isaac's birth to become. So there's something deep about this accountability and responsibility that helps us, create our gathering, come together, be accountable to each other.
Right. I'm going to end with a strange question. Of all the Mishkan artifacts, which is your favorite and why?
Oh my God, like picking a favorite.
Well, you have a menorah, and you have the ark, and you have the table, and you have the altar. So which of these speaks to you the most?
I'm going to say, even though I want to say lechem panim, the showbread, I'm going to say the ketoret.
Okay.
I'm going to say the incense, that smell. Oh, if we only could smell that today, that ability to breathe in and to allow one's emotional senses to awaken in complete joy of the Holy Blessed One. I long for knowing what that would have been like. How about you?
What a wonderful answer and a wonderful tone with which to end our conversation and the book of Shemot. So thank you for coming, and Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos. Have the sweetest Shabbat.